Today we have section of the chapter, last 4 verses of the chapter. I'll start with verse number 24th. Sammadukha sukha swastha samloshta sham kanchana tulya priya apriyo dhira tulya nindatma sanstutihi. So the verse translates to alike in pleasure and pain, rooted in the self, to whom a clod of earth, stone, and gold are alike, to whom the pleasant and unpleasant are alike, the wise to whom censure and praise are alike. So let's take this up word by word. Sam dukh sukh. So the sam is balanced. Dukh is sorrow. Sukh is pleasure. Swastaha means rooted in the self or established in yourself. Sam loshta sham kanchana. So sam is balanced. Loshta is clod of earth. Ushma is stone. And kanchan is gold. So sam loshta sham kanchanam becomes to whom a clod of earth, stone, and gold are the same. Tulya priya apriyo. So tulya is again balanced or similar, comparable. Priya is what is pleasant, apriya is what is unpleasant. So tulya, priya becomes to whom pleasant and unpleasant are alike. Dheer is the wise one or the steady one. Tulya ninda atma sanstuti. So tulya is again alike. Ninda is criticism or censure. And atma sanstuti is what pleases you or it's praise here. So tulya ninda atma santuti becomes to whom censure and praise are alike. So the verse translates to alike in pleasure and pain, rooted in the self, to whom a clod of earth, stone, and gold are alike, to whom the pleasant and unpleasant are alike, the wise to whom censure and praise are alike. So let's chant it together. Sam dukha sukha swastha samloshta sham kanchana tulya priya apriyo dhira tulya nindatma sanstuti. So in this verse, Krishna continues answering the second question of Arjuna, which was, how does a person who has transcended the gunas conduct himself, or what is his lifestyle? So again, what is being highlighted in these verses is the poise and the balance of a wise person, a person who is functioning, taking the support of self, or who is rooted in the self, or who is gone beyond the gunas. So that is what we are talking about here. So now, see, the person is working from the level of the from a different plane entirely. It's like, see, if you are dreaming and you dream that you are in a different country, in a different city, and you lose your wallet which contains your passport and all your credit cards and whatever cash you were carrying, you panic, right? And then suddenly your alarm goes off and you wake up and you say, oh, that was just a dream, right? So once you wake up, what was happening in the dream is irrelevant. It has no consequence, right? So similarly, a wise person who has identified with the waking state of consciousness, or is identifying with the pure consciousness, is not at all affected by what is happening in the world, because the person is established in the self, it has awakened, and knows that these are the material layers. So these material layers will function the way they are supposed to function as per the laws of Prakriti. So the wise person remains unmoved or indifferent or detached from this play of gunas, which will continue, and the different effect of gunas, which will also continue. So when we are talking about the pairs, pleasure and pain, and so on and so forth, we are talking about different levels of our personality. So the gunas produce the perception of pleasantness and unpleasantness, sorry, for the body, pleasure and pain or joy and sorrow for the mind, and criticism and praise at the level of the intellect. So he understands all this will continue, and it is just the play of gunas. It's like the projection that we have been talking on, the immaculate Brahman, and the projection is based upon our gunas, our content, our composition. So it can be a tragedy or a comedy, so that will happen. It's okay. And some of these qualities we had already covered in the last two chapters, chapter 12 and chapter 13, when we were talking about a true bhakta and a jnani. And here again, we had talked about, for a wise person, earth, stone, and gold. Now, stone, you can also identify it with a precious stone, or you can just treat it as stone. It is immaterial because they're all the same. And as far back as chapter 6, which was the Dhyan Yoga, verse number 8, we had read that the yogi who is satisfied with knowledge and wisdom, who remains unshaken, who has conquered the senses, to whom a lump of earth, stone, and gold are the same, is said to be the realized one. Right? So, there also we had used the same terms. And these three, which is earth, stone, and gold, represents the entire range of worldly objects. So, from the most valuable to the least valuable. The point is that to a wise person, they are the same. I mean, so a lump of gold and a lump of earth, they have the same value
Mm.
because they are all at the worldly level. And again, repeating, unpleasantness and pleasantness at the physical level is the same. He's not affected by this. So whether it's hot, temperature is 40 degrees. Okay, if you have an AC, it'll be nice, but a fan is okay. That is what is available, fine. We'll work with that. So at the physical level, pleasantness and unpleasantness are the same. At the mental level, balanced in joy and sorrow. And at the intellectual level, he's balanced in criticism and praise. He's not bothered with whether someone is jeering at him or cheering him. It's the same. Some will do it, some will do one thing, others will do the other thing, and maybe there will be some neutral ones also. Because he has internalized and assimilated and absorbed the knowledge, which is through reflection and contemplation. Right? So he knows, he has understood. So the knowledge has been converted to wisdom, and he behaves or functions on the wisdom. Now, I'll present before you two examples of where knowledge is not internalized. Now, so see, a doctor knows that alcohol is bad for you, but you will have, or you may have, an instance of an alcoholic doctor. So the knowledge is just theory, it's not converted to practical implementation. A priest who knows that your temper should be under control at all times. So you may have instances of an angry priest or an ill-tempered priest. So a wise person has both knowledge and wisdom, and he's living it. He's internalized it, and he is functioning on these principles, and he's not caught up with anything. He's understood the essence of life, and he knows things will function the way they are functioning. So you will have fluctuations in the external world. You will have a hot and cold, all the pairs of opposites that we read earlier. You will have whims and vagaries of nature, changing perceptions, etc. Do not bother him. Having controlled and mastered his senses, he is neutral to sense pleasures, or he is functioning on a different plane. With that, we move on to verse number 25. मानपमानयो न तुल्या सर्वारम्भ परित्यागी गुणातीत स उच्यते. So verse number 25 translates to alike in honor and dishonor, alike to friend and foe, relinquishing all undertakings, the person is said to have crossed over the three gunas. So let's take it up word by word. Man apmanayo, so man, apman, and so in honor and dishonor, so man apmanayo becomes in honor and dishonor. Tulya is equal, so some tulya is the same thing, equal. Tulya is equal, so again we use the word equal, equal for the next one, equal to what? Mitra Ari Paksheo. Mitra is friend, Ari is enemy, Paksheo is side. Which side are you on? So Mitra Ari Paksha becomes to both sides, to both friends and foes. Sarv Arambh Parityagi. So Parityagi is to renounce, and Sarvaram, that I started, I am the doer. So Sarvaram Parityagi becomes relinquishing all undertakings or the sense of doership. Gunatit becomes, Guna is, of course, the guna is the three gunas that we're talking about. Atit becomes past. That means he's crossed over. So Gunatit becomes crossed over the gunas. Saha, he, Uchyate is said. So alike in honor and dishonor, alike to friend and foe, relinquishing all undertakings, the person is said to have crossed over the three gunas. So let's chant it together. मानपमानयोस्तुल्य तुल्यो मेत्रारिपक्षयो सर्वारम्भ परित्यागी गुणातीत स उच्यते. So again, the verse is answering the second query of Arjun's and continues to highlight the balance and poise of a wise person. This is very, very important. A person who is rooted in the self functions with poise and balance. And actually, this verse and the one before this was actually, if you go back to chapter 2, when Arjun had asked qualities of a sthit prajna, these verses are repeated. And not only in chapter 2, that was one of the starting chapters, even subsequently, we are using the same phrases, equal or balanced in honor, dishonor, hot and cold, joy and sorrow. So the pairs of opposites, they are used again and again in the Bhagavad Gita, as you may remember, to describe a person of perfection, a person of realization. And last instances that I just quoted were in chapter 12 and chapter 13, when we had talked about a true devotee and a jnani. So we are now describing the same person, a person of self realization, from the point of view of the gunas, right? So, this is another way of describing that same person, someone who has gone beyond the gunas or beyond the kshetra, beyond the material layers. So these are all synonyms. What? Perfect, a person of perfection, person of realization, person who has transcended the gunas, person who is liberated. They are all synonyms because they are expressing the same kind of a person from different perspectives, right? The same idea is being repeated from different angles. Hopefully, whatever appeals to us will click with us, and we will start, we will imbibe that and function from that level. It's just like saying that, when you are acting in a play, let's say, and maybe you might be the Queen of Sheba in the play. So, however, that character lasts for that 2 hours of performance. And once you get back home, or even immediately after the performance, when the director says something to you, you respond accordingly. You don't continue feeling like the Queen of Sheba and doing whatever you feel like doing, right? So that character that we are playing remains only for the duration of the play. Similarly, like all actors in the play, all activities in the world are nothing but the gunas interacting with the gunas. And one who has renounced all activities, given up all notions like, I am doing this, I did that, I won that prize, all that goes from you, because you were just an instrument, and that happened. All the circumstances were conducive. You were able to achieve what maybe you thought set out to do. So you go beyond the gunas. So it happens, it's good. If it does not happen, that is also good. So such a person who maintains detachment from the gunas is indifferent to what the world thinks of him. Honor and dishonor are the same. Help and censure are the same to him. If a foe troubles him, he's not troubled. If a friend helps him, that's okay, that's great, but it doesn't elate him too much. Now, the pairs of opposites that are mentioned in the verse, honor and dishonor, and friend and foe, they are symbolizing the subtle and the gross worlds that we experience. A person rooted in the self and having gone beyond the gunas maintains poise and equanimity, balance in and through all experiences in the world. So, I mean, when sorrow hits you, yes, you will be affected, but you don't become, hysterical, or you're not able to, where you're not able to control yourself. It doesn't happen like that. Fine, you will cry, you will do all that, but you go beyond that. You're balanced. You know that this is life, this will happen, all this will come my way. So the poise remains in and through all the experiences of the world. Such a person actually functions without ego or without I-ness, without doership, right? With respect to anything. And that is what the verse is saying, that relinquishing all undertakings. So without that doership. So you're not the doer, you are just the instrument. So when a person is detached from the gunas, he is indifferent to all that is to all that is happening around him, right? And this the thought of, whenever the thought that comes to him that I did this and I earned this or I won this, he immediately discards it and brings the awareness back to the self, uh, understanding that whatever is happening is a play of prakriti and the gunas. And a similar verse was verse number 19 of chapter 4, which read that he whose undertakings are free from desire and expectation, whose actions are burnt by the fire of knowledge, him the wise call a sage. That's exactly what is being said here. And here we are talking with respect to the gunas. Now, there, chapter 4 was Gyan Karma Sannyas Yoga, or the yoga of action, yoga of renunciation of action and wisdom. So there we were talking from the point of view of knowledge, how to convert, or wisdom, right? And how that leads to renunciation of action. Here we are talking with respect to the gunas. So knowledge is essential to make the right choice. Knowledge of the higher values detaches us from the lower values. That same example of a toddler clinging onto a rattle, and you're not able to pull it out of the toddler's hands. As the child matures and grows, the child himself or herself will leave that rattle and will move on to the next level of toys or whatever that child likes. Similarly, for us, when the lower value items stop having that meaning or that value, we automatically move to the higher level of items, higher values, right? And the highest goal that we can have for ourselves is the knowledge of the self. So the wise person attaches himself to that goal, the knowledge of the self, and performs the obligatory actions which do not bind him. Binding him means that, see, the moment we take a body, we are a set of vasanas. That's why we have taken a body. So some causal vasanas were existing within us. A wise person functions so that he does not add to the baggage and starts getting rid of whatever vasanas he has, he or she has. So the actions don't bind him or taint him, as we have been reading again and again. So because of this understanding, he acts, and when he acts to sublimate whatever vasanas he has and not to add on to the baggage, he becomes free from desires and expectations. So, with this verse and the previous two, so, right? So, we are on the 25th verse. So, 23, 24, and 25, Lord Krishna has answered Arjun's second question regarding, which was, what is the conduct or what is the lifestyle of someone who has transcended the gunas. Now, let's move on to the verse number 26, which answers the last query of Arjuna's. And I will chant. माम च यो व्यभिचारेण भक्ति योगेन सेवते सगुणान् समेत्तीत्येतान् ब्रह्मभूयाय कल्पते. So Lord Krishna says, and who serving me with unswerving yoga of devotion and crossing the gunas is fit for becoming Brahman. Let's take this up word by word. Mam is me, cha and yah who avyabhicharen. That means unswerving, not vacillating, steady. Bhakti yogin is bhakti yog. Sevate is serves. Saha, such a person. Gunan, the gunas. Samtitya, having crossed. Etan, these. Brahma bhuyaya, for becoming Brahman. Brahma bhuyaya, to become Brahman, or for becoming Brahman, kalpate is fit. So, and who serving me with unswerving yoga of devotion and crossing the gunas is fit for becoming Brahman. So, let's chant it together. Mama cha yo vyabhichareण bhakti yogena sevate सगुणान् समेतीत्येतान् ब्रह्मभूयाय कल्पते. So, the greatness of Bhagwad Gita is that it is a practitioner's book. So, once the theory is explained, the roadmap or the blueprint for action is also told to us. How to reach that state or how to cross the gunas. So, in theory, what is the theory? That Brahman is beyond the three gunas. And the theory goes on to say that to reach Brahman, we have to go beyond the gunas. But how to cross over the gunas? Or how to go beyond the gunas? Arjun had asked this as the third question. That, and what is gunas? What do they imply? My conditioning, my baggage, my inhibitions, my vasanas, my gunas or my binds. That is what is, limiting me. So how do I get beyond that? So after having explained the traits and lifestyles of a person who has gone beyond the gunas, Krishna answers the Arjun's last query and reveals that there is only one way of transcending the gunas or material nature, that is unswerving yoga of devotion or unswerving bhakti yoga. So now when we try to implement all those chapters 3, 4, 5, and 6, 6 is which is the dhyan yoga. So we sit down for some time in meditation and think of Brahman. See, even in that state, we are identifying with the material layers. In the normal course of activities, we normally identify with the material layers, the lower nature. But after our, after studying the scriptures and listening to whatever people have to say, we start identifying with the higher nature. And gradually we reach that state of sitting down in meditation. But even in the meditation, if we observe ourselves objectively, we will find that it is only a very, very fleeting moment that we are actually thinking of Brahman. Most of the time, we are thinking at the material level. So, the verse is indicating that not only the mere knowledge of the self or the theory part, and how to distinguish it from the kshetragya from the kshetra, or the knower of the field from the field, which was the previous chapter, that is not enough. It is only with the help of Bhakti Yoga where the mind has to be fixed on supreme reality, on Brahman, on God when we sit. Or actually, even when we act, we have to think of everything as being done for that Paramatman. It is only then that we will cross over, or we will become one with Brahman. We would have transcended our material layers. So, a great deal of inquiry, self control, meditation sure is required to sit or even think of God. But it is possible. Self realization or reaching Brahman is possible with single minded devotion, bhakti. And once again, the same word is being used, unswerving, single pointed, ananya, without any others. So when we sit down, especially in meditation, we must have an unswerving thought of Brahman. The all thoughts of material layers, we might be contemplating on them. That has to be treated as swerving contemplation. It has to be removed. God requires single pointed, unswerving contemplation or wholehearted contemplation. So, when our heart has no trace of possessing a material object, when we sit down in contemplation on God and we just want to reach God and only God, that is how to cross over or become one with Brahman. And all my physical actions, or at the level of the body, they are performed as a service to God in the spirit of service and sacrifice. This we have covered from chapter 3 onwards till actually chapter 3 to chapter 6. We have covered all this. And even in this chapter, the verse that we just recapped, verse number 19, said that the seer who knows the Supreme, when he or she perceives no agent other than the gunas, reaches Brahman. So, this is the Gyan Yoga, or the path of knowledge. This verse is talking about service and devotion to God, which is service is at the level of the body, or the Karma Yoga. Devotion is with the mind thinking only of God, or Bhakti Yoga. So, in this verse, we are covering the path of action and the path of devotion. So, Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga is being covered here. So, having crossed over the gunas through these three yogas, which we have been talking or reading about since the beginning of Bhagwad Gita, which is the Karma Yoga at the level of the body, Bhakti Yoga at the level of the mind, and Jnana Yoga at the level of our intellect. So, with these three gunas, with these three paths, yogs, we cross over the gunas and we are fit for becoming Brahman. So, through these three yoga, we actually reach our essence. Three paths, all these three paths take us to our true identity and we reach the source. With that, let's move on to the last verse of this chapter, which is verse number 27. Brahmano hi pratishthaham अमृतस्य व्ययस्य च शाश्वतस्य च धर्मस्य सुखस्यैकान्तिकस्य च. So the verse translates to, for I am the abode of Brahman, immortal, immutable, of eternal dharma and absolute bliss. Let's take this up word by word. Brahmana is of Brahman. He is only or for. Pratishta is where you are seated or established or abode. Aham, I. Amritasya, of immortality. Avyavasya is of immutability. Cha and Shashvat is eternal. Cha and Dharmasya is dharma, of dharma. Sukhasya, of bliss. Ekantikasya is absolute, only. Cha and. So the verse translates to, for I am the abode of Brahman, immortal, immutable, of eternal dharma and absolute bliss. So let's chant it together. ब्रह्मणो हि प्रतिष्ठाहम् अमृतस्य व्ययस्य च शाश्वतस्य च धर्मस्य सुखस्यैकान्तिकस्य च. So, in the previous verse, Krishna told us that the seeker who serves him with devotion and actually single pointed devotion is fit to reach Brahman. Here, Lord Krishna is establishing his identity with Brahman. What he says, he's revealing his true nature. And he says that Lord Krishna, or Aham, so he is the abode or basis of Brahman. So he's saying, I am the substratum for the creator. I am not only the substratum for the creator, actually the creation. So I am the substratum for the creator, maintainer, and destroyer. They all draw their powers from me. So whatever you see is drawing that power from me. I am housing that. So Lord Krishna, when we identify with a personality as a person, as a son of Devki or Yashoda, or the person who's having playing ras with the gopis, or as Arjun Sarthi in the Mahabharata, that is just a physical presentation of that Brahman, of that God who is identified with that personality. But this person, Lord Krishna, is actually beyond all these personalities that we see. He is actually the basis of Brahman himself, or he is Brahman himself, actually. Not only if you remove the basis, he is Brahman himself. And what is that Brahman? That Brahman about whom we read in chapter 8, which was the Akshar Brahm Yoga, or the Yoga of the imperishable Brahman, right? So how Brahman is beyond the manifest and the unmanifest worlds. And we also talked about the path of return and no return. How to reach that escape velocity so that we are able to move out of the cycle of birth and death and attain oneness with that Brahman. So some of the attributes that we are covering in this particular verse are Amrit, or immortality. So Brahman does not go through birth and death. It is uh, the beings whose substratum is Brahman. The beings go through birth and death. They have a beginning and an end, but Brahman is there for ever. Avyayam is immutable. That means does not change. So our body undergoes a change, and even our mind and intellect. And these changes are perceptible to us. And the changes are actually perceptible with reference to the changeless factor, actually, which is Brahman. So the changeless substratum supports all, you know. So that is that immutable factor. Then we talk of the Shashvat Dharma, or the eternal Dharma. So the entire creation is passing. I mean, it's a fleeting phenomenon. It is ephemeral. So you have the three powers. creation, maintenance, and destruction. They are all an projection on that immaculate Brahman, and they follow the eternal laws which are established by Brahman himself. So, eternal dharma presents the permanent and eternal value of life and creation. Then the last one that he is using is Sukh Ekantikasya, which is bliss absolute, the one and only bliss, or right? So, absolute bliss. So, self is beyond the mind, desires, and thoughts. And desires and thoughts are creating experiences of joy and sorrow. So, once you transcend the thoughts and desires, you are at a higher level. They are not affecting you. That same example, if the plane is at a particular height or you are in space, a earthquake is not going to affect you, right? You're beyond that. You have moved away from that. You're at a higher level. So when we transcend desires, we reach that state of permanent happiness, the place of absolute bliss, peace, and happiness. So now, when we reach God, then what? Or when we become Brahman, then what? Then all these attributes also apply to us because we have become immortal and immutable. This covers the Sat, or the eternal aspect of Brahman. The eternal Dharma covers the Chit aspect of Brahman. And the bliss absolute covers the Anand aspect of Brahman, which leads us to the expression Sat Chit Anand, which declares, which is an attribute that we give to the Lord, God. So Krishna is saying that he is Brahman, existence absolute, knowledge absolute, and Anand absolute, or he is Satchit Anand, and that is where we reach. We see him as a bottled personality so that we can comprehend him and maybe worship him to that limited extent which we can let our imagination go to, or that we can comprehend, our mind and our faculties can comprehend, but actually is beyond the material layers. So when we go beyond the material layers, we also become one with Brahman. So now it's just that example of the river reaching, merging with the ocean. When the river has merged into the ocean, you cannot say that which, you cannot differentiate actually which part of the water is from the river and which part of the water was already there in the ocean. It's all one big mass of water. So the river has become one with the ocean and has acquired all attributes of the ocean. Similarly, when we merge with God, my limited self becomes one with that absolute self. And with that, we will conclude today's session.